Alive, ladies and gentlemen. You're once again welcome to the Kingdoms podcast, and I have with me fighting out of Edmonton, Canada, Taylor Bull. How are you, Taylor?
Good, I'm good. Thank you. How are you doing?
I am good. I'm okay. Like we were speaking before, I hit the record button. London is cold this evening, and of course, I'll go with me. I'll go with me, my legendary hot tea. In England, they say a cup of tea never hurts anyone.
Yeah.
So like a cup of tea, solves any problem. But
Yeah, I enjoy my tea quite a bit, but I think maybe you guys probably take tea a little more serious over there, no?
yes, like they take
Yeah.
tea very, very seriously. I'm not originally from here. I'm from Nigeria, right? So I moved in here like 2 years ago, and the tea culture was one of those things that really, was like a culture shock. In Nigeria, we don't take tea so seriously, but
Yeah.
here, at first, I came in during the summer period, so I did not understand, why the need for the tea culture. But when the winter hits, I became part of the
Yeah.
tea culture. So, but then, in Canada, I hear you guys have really, 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 not so friendly weather. How-
Yeah, it's a bit rough in the winter. Winter's not the greatest, but I mean, if you're ready for it, getting ready for it's a big thing. Having the proper clothing, having your vehicle ready, winter tires, getting the truck all ready for winter. That's kind of what I've been doing. I got a nice sports car, so I gotta get my truck ready, or else I'll be driving my sports car in the snow, and you don't want to do that.
Don't want to do that. Definitely.
No, not at all. The roads get
Whoa.
pretty rough out here too.
Wow. I just can't imagine, like you guys have really aggressively low weathers, low. No, 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 no way. I can't do minus, like minus 14, minus 20 degrees.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
how do you guys cope? That's even colder than a fridge, colder than a
yeah.
freezer. Like, how? You were born there. Like, talk to me about like your childhood. Like, how's it growing up? Like, where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Musquechies, Alberta, formerly known as Hobima. We changed the name of the. It's a big reserve. There's four different First Nations that amalgamate to make this one reserve called Musquechies. It's basically bare hills, and so my nation is one of the smaller nations. We got about 2,500 members. Born and raised locally. It was a quiet community when I was a kid because I wasn't involved. I was very isolated. But as I got to get into the community and kind of, I guess, rebel when I was younger, I got into some things. I seen some things, and
See some things in your days.
yeah, well, I mean, racism was a big thing, and I grew up on reserves, and so I'm a First Nations. I'm Indigenous. I don't look it aesthetically. I look like just non-Indigenous person. So I kind of witnessed a lot of things by living on the fence. I seen both sides of the fence, and I kind of it bothered me. There was some racism, and just prejudice that I didn't appreciate, and so I kind of rebelled and started to hang around with the boys from my community who are into a little bit different. So gangs were a very big culture growing up out here, especially on reserve up in Canada. A lot of the First Nations we've embraced gang culture from, I guess it would be Hollywood influence from back in the 80s, 90s. A lot of gangster movies, and so being isolated up here, we really took on those cultures, and we kind of made subcultures within our community of gang lifestyle. And it was, there's not much opportunity as far as like jobs out here. So the gang culture, we're very tribally, our tribal mentality, being First Nations, ancestrally, we're very tribal. So the whole gang culture was very fitting. It fit to that mentality of tribalism, right? And so I mean, I kind of got into that mix. The problem, I guess, was that I was really good at it. I wasn't a bad dude, but I understood the assignment. And so I somewhat thrived in that. I don't know how to call it, a underworld. It was just the street life. So, violence, drugs, partying, that type of lifestyle. And I spent, my younger years there. It wasn't until one of my friends, I was actually working at a bar, and one of my friends who was a bouncer there, because I was bouncing, and so I was dealing with some unmentionables at the bar. And he goes, "Hey, you're
Wow.
really good at this."
Interesting characters.
He said, "You're really good at this." I took care of one of them. And I see, he said, "You're really good at this. You should call my buddy down in Lethbridge, just a southern city in Canada here." And he said, "You should call my buddy. He'll probably give you a pro fight." And it didn't, I was still wrapped up in that gangster mentality. I wanted to be gangster. I thought there was a future, or I was trying to create something with what I had in front of me. And until I realized there was no future there is when I finally took the step towards committing to the fight game, the combat sport. Because I thought, if I'm going to try to be this wannabe gangster, working with these people, it's going to end up in jail or dead. Right? And so that was obvious to me. And then I looked at this other opportunity of fighting. I thought, hey, like I could travel the world and do this thing that I really enjoyed doing, because I did a lot of fighting in that street life, but it was very calculated. I like to fight, especially at the bar. It was like when guys come to the bar, especially small town where I grew up, Friday night, Saturday night, guys wanted to fight. And so, I mean, a lot of times back then, it was them picking on a guy, and I would step in and say, "Hey, look, try someone your own size," and we'd have a go at it, and it'd be a good time. It was just fighting. It wasn't until years later that things started to escalate and people started to pack weapons, and the gang thing got really clouded with violence, with extreme violence.
Extreme
For young,
violence.
right, for younger years fighting, like it was a great time. I mean, there was a lot of brawls, maybe some very dangerous situations. But the thing was, is that everybody was there. I mean, I would always say that I never fought anybody who didn't want to fight. There were two times in my life that I got a little bit got on my high horse, and I thought I was a tough dude and I wanted to prove it. Especially back in those days, I was trying to set. I don't know what I wasn't right. So I step out of line and try to prove it, and I got dealt with. Both times I got dealt with, and afterwards I thought, well, yeah, you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes.
Play
I'm
stupid games,
asking for
win
trouble.
stupid prizes.
I'm out there looking for trouble. You're gonna find it. And so I kind of learned
Absolutely.
early that you got to stay humble, and there's a moral high ground to some of these situations. And in the streets, when I went pro, now everybody's tough. Now everybody wants to be there, right? Everybody is there training, and yeah, it wasn't so easy when I went pro. And then all of a sudden,
It's a
I
different
think,
ball game.
I think, yeah, yeah, yeah. I fought some tough guys, but like in the street, there were some tough guys. I had some good goes. And afterwards, a lot of times I'd go buy them a beer after, right? It was just, it wasn't, and all those friends, even some of the guys who things got really gangster, like there were weapons involved. A lot of those guys I bump into nowadays, and we shake hands, and it's one
Yeah.
of the great that history. That's history, and they say I see what they're doing. And a lot of guys grow out of it, A lot of guys get families, have kids, and they start to see that, well, we can't. And for me, it was you can't do bad things and accept good things to happen for you. And I was out there, propagating this gang culture. And one of the biggest, I guess, turning points for me was I lost one of my nephews to suicide. And
Easy.
up until that point, yeah, man, thank you. He was basically living the lifestyle that I was. I feel responsible for kind of showing off that lifestyle as if it's some measure of success. Because as I said, I was good at it. So I mean, I don't like to go back into that life and talk about it like it's some sort of badge. But as I said, I have no regrets, because that whole experience, it brought me to a place where I can understand, and it grew me to this place. And I'm very proud of where I am now. So I can't look back at that and go, oh, I should have never, I
You
wouldn't be
should.
who I am
Yeah.
today.
It's just part of your own
But
pathway, your own unique pathway
right,
in life.
right. But at the time, I was very, like, I started fighting, but before I started fighting, I was still somewhat of I wouldn't say local celebrity, but I was a pretty I was a pretty bad dude, and my name,
Small town
you know,
hero, small town
yeah,
hero.
yeah. I don't know if I'd call it a hero, more of a villain, but I was notorious for that, and so I had to for a long time. I spent over well my whole career so far since went pro was when everything I turned everything around. But I was kind of showing these kids a different lifestyle before, and I was a big deal for that because like I said, I was thriving. I had the money, I had the cars, I had the I don't call it. It's not like it's not riches of any sorts. You can make a lot of money in that lifestyle, but it's all just go to the store money. You can go to the store every day. You can go to the store anytime you want, but you can't put it in the bank. You can't buy a house. You maybe buy a car, but everything else, it adds up and you start to look, they're going to catch you on tax evasion. They're going to, you're going to get caught in that criminal lifestyle. And so I was really going nowhere with a pocket full of money. To the kids, that looked, that
It looks
looked great.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
kids
yeah. I
get
mean, that's what I was in it for. That's
easily
what I
attracted to
saw.
bad influence.
Yeah, well, that's what I saw. That's what brought me in. I looked around and I seen, well, this is what everybody else is doing. This is what the guys I want to be hanging out with are doing. So I'm going to do that. And I took my opportunities and kind of muscled my way into that world. Mind you, it was easy. Like the fighting thing was easy. I was getting beat up until I was getting my butt kicked all over the place. I have an older brother who was pretty rough on me, but also growing up as I was the white boy on the res, and then I was the native in town. So like there was no, I was always the outside guy. No matter where I
Hmm.
went, I wasn't quite, I didn't quite fit. So
Yeah,
it was always a tough
I think
spot.
that brings some sort of identity crisis, sort of.
I was trying to figure out where I fit. How do I belong? And that's when I said that bit of racism was a turning point for my rebellion. Anyway, was that I walked into a class one morning and I'm playing with a basketball. I'm at the gym in school, right? And I'm playing with my basketball. I put it away because this class hasn't started yet. And this other kid, one of my friends from the reserve, one of my native friends, come in, plays with the basketball, gets yelled at. He gets yelled at, sent to the office, and I'm sitting there going, but I just did that. And I couldn't fathom as to what the difference was. And it just dawned on me that it's very, it was prejudice.
Exactly.
It was just obvious to me. I felt it, and I just, it angered me, right? So I started to think, well, if he thinks that guy is a bad dude, then I want to, I'm with them. I'm with them. And so I
Mm.
thought to myself, well, okay, well, I got to become a bad dude then. And the threat of violence wasn't so big. I got good at getting beat up. That's not a hard thing to do. I got good at it. So getting hurt wasn't a fearful thing. And then,
Again, because you've embraced that fear already.
yeah, yeah. And so, and I always, so my brother, as I said, we were always roughhousing. I was always asking for it, if you could say. Most of the times I was, but I got, it was rough housing brothers, you know how brothers are. So I got good at that. I got kind of good at taking a beating. And then I got lynched on my way to school one morning.
Crazy.
Three guys came and beat me up. I was just a kid. They weren't too much old. I mean, they were high school. They come and punch me around.
Why?
Apparently they thought I was another kid. And that was the excuse I got. And this is just, this is high school drama stuff. Like they thought I was this other guy, and so they kind of came and punched me around. I went back crying. I went to my brother. I said, "Hey, because he's my brother, I thought he's going to take care of it." So we would go to the school the next morning, and nothing happened. And it didn't get taken care of. Long story short, nothing happened, and I noticed that, well, hey, okay, well, maybe I got to take care of things myself. And so I looked at myself, and I remember sitting there on the side of the street. I think I was about 17, 16, 17 years old, and I'm looking around. I'm like, wow, I'm a pretty big guy. I thought, well, heck, maybe I could just take care of myself. And
Mm.
so I kind of started to engage in that way, like, all right, well, let's fight then. And so I kind of stood my ground from then on and was willing to defend myself. And granted, I took a lot of beatings, or, I took damage, but I always came out on top. There were some wild times, like there were some wild times. There were some life threatening, situations where there's 10 on 5, and even sometimes me against 5 guys, and it was just I got used to that, and but I thrived. Like I said, a lot of times I beat up all 5 of those guys. Mind you, keep in mind these are all guys, street guys. These are all tough guys coming out of the bar type stuff, right? This isn't 5 pros who are trained up and out of the. This is 5 yokels from the bar or whatever. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was
But
still it was still
two things, two things that stand out for me, right? I think number one is bullying. And bullying is a hot topic globally, right? Bullying is something that is frowned upon. It is not acceptable. It can never, ever be acceptable. But it has become a menace, especially in schools, in institutions across the world. There's something, Joe Rogan was saying on his podcast about bullying. That one way that seems, counterintuitive or counterproductive to stop bullying is to train kids how to fight. Because a lot of times, people want to feel better for themselves. A lot of bullies are people with low self-esteem, right?
yeah,
They want to feel
yeah,
better about themselves, preying on, weaker victims, and that's not a very good thing. However, when you train people how to fight, they become self-confident. You can hold your own in the case of, a confrontation. Now, number two that stands out to me is street fighting is different from professional fighting.
oh
Right.
yeah,
I never, went pro. I never, got into the amateurs, right? But when I was in, secondary school, which you guys call high school, I started training taekwondo, karate. And when I was in university as well, I was training taekwondo. And I think that's one thing that brought me, that affinity towards combat sports, right?
yeah,
Now, I remember I grew up in Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria. Lagos, the streets is not as, terrible as what you have in Canada, the US, but streets in Lagos can be really messy, right? And we have some kind of guys we call conductors, for the buses. Some of like the most rough guys you can see on the streets. And people usually are scared of them because they're into drugs. They take, marijuana, they take lots of like crazy drugs, and they're always high and aggressive. But one thing, that stood out for me was there was a day I was attacked by one of them. And when I applied, the techniques, from karate, I beat up this guy on the street because he literally wanted to beat me.
yeah,
And I was able to defend myself. I think something switched in my head. Like, bro, you can hold your own against, anybody who's who's trying to attack you. Even though I was really young at the time, I was less than 20, but it gave me that confidence in life that, never be scared. And I think for different human beings, you have like different confrontations. Sometimes if your first major confrontation is a situation where you get beaten up, it can affect your self-confidence for the
yeah,
rest of your life, right?
yeah.
So for you, right, at what point did you realize that there is a big difference between street fighting and, professional fighting?
Well, when I went pro, the difference for me was being an athlete and not being it. Like that was the huge leap. Was coming from the street. The fighting was easy. Getting hit, that's
Hmm.
easy. Hitting someone, that's
Hmm.
easy. I can do all that, but it's
Hmm.
living like an athlete. It was so
Hmm.
different, and that's what I mean about like. Sure, I was fighting 5 on 1 in the street, but those
Yeah.
are 5 yokels who haven't trained. So I was,
Yeah.
handled them without
Technique
even.
beats power.
Exactly, exactly. And so, and I mean, and also quite often talking about bullying, quite often I was, like I said, in the moral high ground. I had never, or like I said, 2 times. There were 2 times in my entire life that I got out of line, and I was not necessarily picking on somebody, but picking on the world and saying, trying to. I was on high on myself, and I was trying to prove it, and the world put me in my place, rightfully so.
Nice
Right.
one. Nice
And
one.
so I've been humbled, and I recognize that you can't go And so, as I said, even when I would have a good fight back in the street life, it was guys who wanted to fight.
Mhm.
Um, and quite often it was guys who wanted to fight and they were picking on someone else. They didn't often want to fight me. They were often, especially at the bar, it would be them picking on some tough guy, picking on a little guy, and I would step in. And even when I wasn't working at the bar, growing up in high school, that was a lot of my altercations. If I wasn't because I didn't look the part. So sometimes I would be in this position where I'd hear people talking in a racist manner, and I would confront them right away and be like, "Whoa, hey, what's going on?" So there was a lot of conflict like
Yeah,
that. Or I was protecting a younger or a smaller person because I always,
a vulnerable
thought, well,
person.
guys, like, yeah, like it was usually a situation where I was stepping up for somebody else, and I like to protect my people. And so what I did in my local town was I kind of took over, but that allowed me to like make sure that our bar was safe and we didn't have, there were incidences, there were times when people came in with guns and we had to deal with that. But all in all, I think we kept it pretty chill. And I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it was real crazy, like, but I mean, people weren't taking anybody's lives. That's one thing that there were, it has happened. It does happen. Like it's bad everywhere, right? It can be bad everywhere. But during that time, there was a real heavy emphasis on just fighting. Everybody wanted to fight. And that was before I went pro. Everybody wanted to fight. It's like when I went pro, it was early of the martial arts, mixed martial arts. Boxing was a thing. I was watching boxing. Boxing has been big for, the 150-year-old sport. Like it's been big
Like
forever.
it's
But
history
MMA
ties
was early.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much
MMA was early. It was
1993.
just coming around. And there wasn't much amateur. So like when I went pros, because there was no, I think I tried getting into a So You Think You Can Fight, which was just a TV show where they pitted two guys with beef and put them together, and it was just like big boxing gloves, big headgear. It wasn't an amateur thing, but it was basically one of my friends used it as amateur experience before he went pro. It was all that shut down. So when I went to go pro, it was just go straight pro, and I went in there with. I went in there and fought a young amateur kickboxing champ, and he was his pro debut, my pro debut. I came out of my first fight. I think I maybe spent about 3 weeks in the gym, like a gym, not a martial arts gym, just a gym. I had
That's the
my
thing.
hands from the street, and I watched a lot of boxing. So I had timing, and I had reach, and I had my footwork. Kind of the same things that I utilize. We're very well now, but now I have all the other training. So
Yeah.
I was still doing pretty good. I was still very technical in the street. I wasn't a brawler, and I finished. It's kind of what I'm doing in bare knuckle now. Is I'm not fighting, I'm finishing, and so I was good at it. But yeah, when I went to my first fight, it was MMA, and they ended up doing a switcheroo on me. I set up to fight this one guy. I came in, they said, "Oh, he's not going to make weight, so we want you to fight this other guy who was their poster boy, this kickboxing champ." So amateur, right?
Whoa.
So he had amateur experience. So I said, "Yeah, whatever." I was still full of myself back then. I didn't care. I was taking on the world. So yeah, let's go. And they said,
Yeah,
"Well, hey, okay, but we'll give you more money." They said, but you're going to be main event.
ah,
So my first fight there, I am setting up to go out as main event. I got guys in the background telling me how big of a deal that is, and I was oblivious, man. I was like, it's whatever, man, because like I said, I'm still thinking street mentality. I'm just whatever, and yeah, this one guy's like, man, I've been fighting forever. I'm still haven't been a main event, and so there I was going out main event, first fight of my life, and it was a good show. I did good hands. We were throwing. I was definitely more sloppy back then, but I was throwing with him. We had a good exchange, 2 rounds, and then he figured out that I had no ground game and just took me down and elbows from, yeah, it was bad. I was all
Bring out
beat
this
up.
ground and pound.
Oh,
Ground
man.
and pound.
I was all beat up, bruised, bloody. And then afterwards, sitting there with my family, with my dad, and sitting there, and I just had this big smile on my face. I was hooked. I was hooked. Took a good beating, but yeah, no, I was hooked, man. And ever since then, yeah, it's been about 18 years I've been doing this, 25 fights. Um,
A
you
vet
know,
already.
yeah, I feel like it. I've seen guys come and go. I've seen guys
Mm.
start their career and retire before. Yeah, and yeah, I'm all about longevity. I mean, I train hard. As I'm getting older, I train smart. But I feel like I started training smart before I needed to, getting ahead of
Mm.
the curve. Because I mean, I'm about longevity. I don't want to be a shriveled up old man. I want to be active. And so, as much as
And
I've taken
keep your
some damage,
faculties.
yeah, I picked my battles. And when I'm fighting, or like when I take a loss, like I've had a knockout loss. I've had a pretty big knockout loss. I took my time off. I wasn't. Some guys get worried about time, like, oh, I'm this old, so it's a young
Mhm.
man's game. And granted, yes, it is a young man's game, but the body, it can do amazing things if you give it the right attitude and you give it the right nutrients. Right, a lot of things can be done. Your brain can bounce back. You can recover. You can heal. You can, grow from those after those damages. And a lot of people think the brain is just, it's a static state, like it can't heal. And sure, we maybe can't grow certain neurons back, but we can definitely give it what it needs to soothe and heal from some of the damage. Because we're in the fight, we're in the hurt game. With combat sport, you got to be expecting to take damage. So it just
Okay.
seems to me that we should be doing everything we can to counter that damage. Whether it's because, like, even just meditation can regenerate gray matter within the brain. Reading books, right? You don't use it, you lose it. So, you want to do all these things, especially when it's the hurt game, and we got to take care of the most important tool we got. A lot of things, they think, oh, it's a
Mental.
fight. It's just fighting, right? Oh, it's just fighting.
It
No,
is not just
it's a
fighting.
smart man's game. You gotta be
Yes,
smart. It's a thinking man's game. Sorry.
definitely. Yeah, like I like to say something. Fighting is not just physical, it is also mental, and it is even more mental than physical. But a lot of
Yeah,
people do
I
not
would, I would agree.
Yeah, a lot of people do not realize that. But the thing is, in order to be a well-rounded fighter, right? In order to be a complete fighter, you need to achieve a handshake, right? Between your mental health and your physical health. A lot of people focus more on the physical health, but do not care about the mental health, right?
Yeah,
But we need to realize that the mental health, right? The mental side, right? When your brain is in sync with your body, you do amazing things, right? It's the
yeah,
mind and the body, right? Sometimes the mind is sharp, but the body is not sharp. I'll give you an example. I'm a chartered accountant, right? Grew up doing finance. Over time, now interacting with a lot of sports, practitioners, a lot of fighters. When I clocked 30, I discovered, damn, my body was, peaking. You know that you can't get away with a lot of things that you used to do in your 20s. And I discovered you need to focus on not just your mind, because as a professional in accounting and finance, you guys, tend to do a lot of, studying, a lot of research. But it means you're feeding your mind, but you're not feeding your body. You're not taking care of the body. What happens? The body starts to fail. But for fighters, it's the other way around, right? You're in the gym all the time, right? But then what about meditation? What about mindfulness? What about, studying? What about research, right? What about critical thinking, right? But when you merge the two of them, you have a complete human being.
oh yeah.
so, so
I'm really
you,
glad you brought up that mental health aspect. That's
yeah.
huge.
So you, what do you do to take care of both ends? Like what would
It's,
what would be your advice for other athletes?
So in my culture, I'm a Plains Cree, indigenous Plains Cree. We believe in something, a way of living, miopamot, pimatuin. A good life is to follow these laws. And there's a way of looking at ourselves with four parts. Newaliao, four-part people,
Hmm,
people of four parts. So there's
interesting. I
spiritual,
like to learn about that.
spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional. So those
Wow.
four parts, those are what, a person, a community, those parts are important within that structure. So as a fighter, as a coach, I make sure that all four of those parts are catered to. And I really like that you brought that up because I'm getting people asking me like, because I'm so currently after being what I would consider one of the most successful losers in MMA and boxing, as far as athletes go, because I have losing records in both sports, but I'm top ranked, and it's I'm top 10 in Canada in boxing, and I'm still getting calls. I'm still in demand. So even though I always said I'm the most successful loser, but now I'm undefeated in bare knuckle. So
Wow.
and so now that I have this sort of proof that hey, whatever I'm doing is working. Now people want to ask about what's going on, and they think like people think, oh, maybe I got a new coach or maybe I improved something with my training. Nothing has changed with my training. What I would hinge all of my success recently, all of my success, because I'm doing other things and not just fighting, but I've been being quite successful in my ventures. It's all been from the self work. It's been the work on myself. I did some therapy that had some breakthroughs. There was
Mm,
emotional blockages. There was self sabotage, right? There were all these things from trauma, from past trauma, that I had a hard time believing that I even deserved it. So, winning in fights, I mean, nothing's really changed my training and my whole thing, but I was able to go and undo some of these blockages that really was just not allowing me to step in and be my best in the ring. And it was before my first bare knuckle fight. I did this session with the doctor locally from my reserve here, and we got through some of this. It was losing my grandma, my gukum, when I was young. There was this disconnect from my people, and I didn't know if I belonged. And so now
mm,
that I've gotten out of my own way, I can see that I never needed to prove that I belonged anywhere. So this
mhm.
whole needing to win thing kind of evaporated. And now I'm just going to show up and show out, show up and fight. And that's what I focus on, is just being the best I can be during that match. And so
Exactly.
far I got 2 first round finishes. I figured with the bare knuckle thing, I think I thought I found my sport, but it should only take me a round to either knock you out or break your face. And so far, that's been the thing. The first guy I fought, tough kid, would not go to sleep, but I ended up breaking his orbital. So you can either go to sleep or you can get
They
broken.
take
And so
unnecessary damage.
yeah, yeah, and so I'm feeling pretty confident in my whole bare knuckle career. But like I said, I think all that, so far the success from that, it all stems from that work I did on myself. That emotional, that mental, that spiritual work. I'm very involved with my culture as well. We do a lot of ceremonies throughout the year. That has been a huge part of me grounding myself, and like I said, the work on my mental state, my emotional state. For a long time, I was just chasing endorphins. And so I was just all about the physical, right? And it was just physical. And so if I had a bad day, I'd go to the gym, right? And it works. It does work, but it doesn't really get to the core of what
Temporary.
is
Yes.
baking. Yeah, yeah. So like it'll get you through the day. So I'm not mad at myself for not having done the work. I wasn't ready to then, so it kept me alive, right? It was a survival tactic. And then it was great. Now recently I recognize I can't just keep chasing endorphins. During the lockdowns when COVID came around, they wouldn't let me to the gym. No, I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't even fight. So that whole thing, it developed. Like I couldn't you couldn't use my tools to stay sane, right? And so I really started to lose it. Well, not lose it. I kind of reverted. I went back I guess, I went back to the pipeline, and I made a bunch of money, and I came home and I felt very lost because I had no fight. There's no fighting. I felt lost. And so I kind of got back into the bottle a little bit. Alcohol became a thing and I had all this money. So I kind of got lost in that for a couple months. But then I recognized, I caught myself and I recognized, okay, I can't stay here. So I pulled myself out of that hole and got myself back to fight shape, got myself back to healthy, and I've been there ever since. But a big part of that was recognizing that I needed to do the work. I needed some way. So therapy was a big thing. The culture, like the ceremonies I was doing, but also just art too. I started doing music. And it was very therapeutic. It was very therapeutic. I wrote.
Music is
I
food to the
really
soul.
Yeah, man. I released an album last year on Spotify and other things, eh? And it was just a project that I
Wow.
did because I was just going crazy at home doing nothing. So I needed to express myself, I needed to, and it was great. So I mean, I've had a really good time with it. I met a lot of people. I don't have huge aspirations of being a top 40 artist, but I learned a lot about the industry, and it was exciting. It was fun. I've done some live performances. Like I said, I've made a pittance on money, royalties, but it was just, it's already paid itself off because the doing it was what was therapeutic, right? Writing the
Mm,
songs and recording it, doing all that, doing it was therapeutic. So it's already paid off. So I'm
wow.
happy about that little experience I had. And, there's potential. I'm always trying to connect dots for people. Back home here, I'm actually, my family is the ancestral, so it's a hereditary chiefdom of our tribe. Until the government came in and kind of changed our ways, we were hereditary, and so the father would pass down chiefdom to the next son, and would pass
Okay.
down. So my father's father was the last hereditary chief, and so I grew up with this idea, or this with these words that my father and my grandpa, my Musa, I heard them telling me, just like they told my dad about,
Mm.
you have to care about our people. You have to be there for them. You have to do these things and be a part of our community. So I'm very much deeply ingrained in being a community type person, especially after I stopped with the other life, that other lifestyle was a big part of it, was like,
Yes,
wow,
yeah,
I
and you
witnessed.
have that strong sense of identity,
Yeah, yeah, and that was the thing, was that was my saving grace, was it
Mm.
that culture allowed me to step back and into something that was healthy and something I belonged in. And so it's a big thing I do. I try to share that experience with other kids. I'm always trying to encourage our youth to be culturally inept, like go to the ceremonies. And it's hard sometimes because you don't know what's going on, but you only learn if you go, and it's a big struggle for us to get our language back, to learn our language again. Something that, you know, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah.
And language is a
Um,
strong part of identity.
exactly. Exactly. And so that's something that I recognize out here is we need identity is a big thing, and a purpose as well. Once, our lifestyle changed crazy, like in the last 100 years, the way we've lived, mind you, my ancestral, my First Nations ancestry anyway, because I'm a bit mixed. I've got some Polish, Scottish, and Plains Cree. So my mother's lineage is European settlers, European immigrants, right? And then my father's lineage is the Plains Cree, and those are the guys. Those are that his lineage is the chiefdom, right? So there's that real deep connection to the land and the people. And so I'm always trying to give back. I'm always trying to, as I said earlier, when I was in that bad life and I was kind of coming out of it, I kept saying like, geez, I got to find my way back into heaven. And so I've been just I've been trying to make up for all the things that I was a part of before that was doing the damage, right? And because if you're not a part of the solution, then often you're part of the problem.
The part of the problem. You've been restored
Yeah.
and forgiven.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so far, so good. I think my reputation has definitely been, um, I guess, fixed. Not many people talk about who I used to be anymore. For the first 10 years, it was people were skeptical, and rightfully so. Because honestly, in the beginning, I started to do it. It's funny, when I started to act like a good guy, I was still a bad guy, but I thought it was a good thing to do to throw them off the trail, right? And then lo and behold, you fake it till you make it. And I just ended. It was it was really who I was. But as that young man in that world, I looked around and I recognized that. I think I was about 17 years old, 16 years old. I looked around and I realized that this good little kid that my parents had raised is not going to survive here. So I had to get rid of that
Mm.
kid, and I had to become something else. And so a lot of what I did back then was drama. It was acting. I never took any drama. I never took any acting classes. I am actually in some classes now. I'm actually tapping into that skill of mine because it is a skill. It's actually I'm doing rather well, but it was always just an act. They wanted a bad guy, so I gave them the baddest dude I could give them. And like I said, I thrived at it, but there was just definitely no future. And my heart hurt seeing my nephews and seeing losing people and feeling like I was a part of that. I wasn't that guy. I wasn't a bad dude. So I had to save my soul. And that's been what it's all been about for, the last 20 years. And I thank I thank God every day for the boxing, for mixed martial arts. I don't think I don't think anything else would ever done it for me. I was a hockey player. I got drafted. I made I could have got into the juniors. I could have worked my way maybe to the NHL. I was good at hockey, but it wasn't for me. Yeah,
Ignite that passion in you. And it
yeah,
speaks to
yeah,
something I was telling somebody, yesterday, right? It's like in life, I feel like if you don't find your purpose, you will always, you know, live a miserable life. But once you find your purpose, everything just, becomes more meaningful to you. But
yeah,
if you do not find your purpose in life, everything, seems miserable and you will just feel troubled. That's something with life. But the moment you find your purpose, no matter how difficult that purpose is, you would always, find that passion to be able to continue, to be able to persevere, to be able to be determined, to stay persistent. And that's one
yeah.
thing with, finding, your purpose in life. You have talked about, finding your identity, right? And also staying true to yourself. There was something a friend told me, I think about 2 months ago, and it really made me appreciate my own self more, right? This person said, I like something about you. You don't compete with other people. You are in constant competition with your own self. You're always competing with yourself to become a better version of yourself. And that is something that also resonates with you. The point at which you discovered that, it's not about what people are saying or what other people are doing, but me, right? I feel like things changed for you based off, your story that you have told today. But for you, what would you say has been your biggest adversity so far in your life?
I guess my biggest struggle has been just keep going. We have a saying in Cree, "Akame Mok," which is just keep going, perseverance. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons. And that's my biggest message I try to give from my experience is that I'm told so many times that, hey, you should just quit. And like I said, for a long time, I went on some good losing streaks, you know, and there's been plenty of reasons to quit. Now, from when I started on the res here, I opened my gym recently because I recognized when I started 20 years ago, there was no gym here. I had to go up to Edmonton, I had to figure out where to go. It was tough. And I didn't get a coach. I never had a coach for the first 10 years of my career. Sometimes I was wrapping my own hands, like I was there going by myself. Maybe I had my dad. But the way I seen it back then was like I could either do it by myself or I could not do it. And to me, that wasn't an option. I was doing it. So when the option, when it came a possibility, I was just doing it. Wait for anybody to show me how. I just did it. And so a lot of my lessons were learned the hard way, which now, like I said, no regrets because, geez, I know them very well. And when you learn the hard way, they really hit home. So
Yes, yes, it
yeah,
does. It does hit home more.
I've been in a lot of different situations where I've been in so many different situations where I feel like I've seen it all. And now as a coach, I can really give that to my local guys. Unfortunately, there's
Mm.
not a whole lot of us local guys, but there's still like from when I started, it was just me. Now I've got about 5 guys. One of them just went pro, and and you know, not all of them are going to be fighters, but I've seen what I've been able to do in their life and what I've helped them accomplish. I guess what
Yeah,
I've been
building
just getting
character,
that dot.
important.
Yeah, just connecting it. That's all I want to do. That's what I was saying earlier. Is like I'm all about just connecting dots. I want you to meet, connect with something that's going to spark that passion because passion pays. Not always in
Hmm.
money, but intrinsically it always pays.
The
And
impact.
so I'm all
Yeah.
for helping people find their passion. And that's
Mm.
inspiring. That's been my whole shtick, I guess, is inspiring. So I try to do things because no one ever. So when I was growing up, and as I said, why I got into the gang culture is because it's what I saw. Yeah, I had
Yeah.
everybody telling me
Kids
what I
learn by
should do.
example.
Exactly. So I'm not, I could go out there and lecture these kids what they need to do and what they got to do. I could, talk to them for hours, but they'll do,
They
there's
learn
this
by what you
see,
see.
see. So I figured, okay, well, I got to start
Yeah.
doing, right? And so I'm taking risks, even with the music thing, it's like, no one told me I was good, but I wanted to do it anyway. And so I did it. And that's kind of my MO is if I say something, well, I'm going to do it. So, you gotta try all sorts of, my parents, they're always about, you're going to try it. Well, I don't want to do it. Well, you're going to try it anyway, and we'll figure it out. If you might like it, if you don't, we'll try something different. But, you got to try everything. A lot of these
Yeah,
kids nowadays, we
definitely.
got everything at our fingertips, right? We got everything right here, so we don't have to, go out and experience. But man, that's where life is, that's where miracles happen.
Mm.
Got to be,
I like the spirit of trying. I like it. There's something I love to say. If we try, we may win. But if we don't try, have lost.
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
nothing ventured, nothing gained, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, so what's your advice, as a big brother to young people in this age and time? What's your life advice?
I would say get into something, whatever it is. It's got to speak to you. Like it's got to speak to you, to what you love. Passion pays. So you got to find something you're about. Be about something. It doesn't matter when you start, right? Because I mean, a lot of people are worried, like, oh, I suck at this. But the thing is sucking at anything is the first step to being great at anything.
Mm,
So
very,
you
very
got to be
true.
willing. You got to be willing to suck at it. And if it's something in here, then even if you suck at it, if it's in here, you're going to keep at it. And if you keep at it, you're going to get good at it. Right? But you have to
Yeah.
have that connection. You have to have that reason as a passion in order to get you through the days when you do suck. Because it's like, oh, it's easy to quit. That's the easiest thing to do. But when you love something and you find that thing that just speaks to who you are, be about it. And you'll find a life. You'll find a livelihood. You won't just make a living. Money will come with passion. That will come, right? But
Mm.
you'll find a life that's worth living. That is success.
Wow. Wow. You nailed it. You seriously nailed it. I'm really, really grateful, having you on the pod today. At the end of the pod, I have a tradition wherein I ask you a question from the previous guest, and of course, you have to leave a question for the next guest. So, the previous guest, he's a fighter, Aaron Jeffrey. So he's with a Bellator MMA.
Oh yeah.
He just fought Douglas Lima
Oh
recently and
nice.
won. Yeah, he's
Big name,
Canadian like
yeah.
yourself. He's
Yeah.
Canadian like yourself as well, right? So let me see. I did remember what he said just now, but I'm trying to remember what he is asking. Aaron Jeffrey, what did he say? I'm struggling to remember now. So I did ask him a question about the other guy who talked about what life is about. And okay, he left something really, really simple. He asked, what is your favorite cheat meal?
My favorite cheat meal?
Yes.
I usually I wouldn't call it a meal, but I usually buy a whole pie and just eat the whole thing. Just
Whoa.
sweet tooth. I got a sweet tooth, man. I got a sweet tooth. So I'll get a whole cherry pie, apple pie, and I'll just get some ice cream. And yeah, man, that's my cheat right there. It's one that's one sitting, but I don't know. I got a sweet tooth. So
This is
I
one sweet tooth talking to another sweet tooth. Interesting stuff. What question would you like to leave for the next guest?
would say what is because I actually just had to turn down our fight in Russia for October. Yeah, but it was just a conflict of schedule, right? But the money was great, and Russia, man, yeah, that would have been exciting to go fight in Russia. So I'm curious, what's the most exciting place that you have or would like to fight?
What's the most
Yeah,
exciting place you like? Okay, it may not be a fighter, so I'll just say, what's the
Oh,
most exciting place you'd
visit,
like to go?
visit. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Where's
okay,
your
visit.
destination? Travel destination.
Yeah,
Where would
yeah,
you
the
like
most
to
exciting.
go most? Yeah, yeah. Because
Okay.
that would have been fun to go to Russia. Yeah,
Whoa,
I think
Russia.
Japan too. Yeah,
Okay.
just to
Uh,
see, right? You know, yes, I be a little, but it was exciting to think of the prospect of it. Mind you, I'm kind of glad that I was booked or schedule conflict because it might be a little dangerous right now. But definitely exciting anyway. But yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on the podcast today. I'm actually needing to go and I got a horse got away from us on the farm here, and so I got to go wrangle him up this morning. Gotta go get
okay.
before the
Okay, bro. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you.